Hello, I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters. We hope you'll continue to watch as we discuss issues facing our community and provide you with the resources and information needed to find solutions. Welcome to Community Matters. It's an alarming statistic. On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. In 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. What can be done to alleviate the situation? Well, here today from InterAct is Allison Strickland, the Chief Development Officer, and Tasha Sullivan, the Senior Director of Domestic Violence Services. And to both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
You want to tell us a little bit about InterAct?
Absolutely.
Sure. InterAct is a dual agency serving victims of domestic violence and sexual assault here in Wake County. We've been around for about 40 years, and we are providing really the only agency providing comprehensive services to victims in our community.
You know, when we think of abuse, I think most people gravitate towards physical abuse, something that you can see outward signs of. But there's a variety of different abuses. Would you mind, when we talk about abuse of a partner, what are we really talking about?
Absolutely. So domestic violence is the threat or use of violence or intimidation by an intimate partner to maintain power and control over their other partner. And just as you said, it's not just physical. There are lots of different types of abuse that can play into what we call the cycle of violence, and that can be verbal, emotional, spiritual, isolation, and financial abuse. And all of those things come together to form a pattern to maintain power and control over that partner.
I mean, just in the open, those statistics were stunning. I mean, is that big of a problem? I mean, are we talking millions and millions of people are suffering from domestic abuse?
Absolutely, and it's a problem that impacts many layers of our community. InterAct itself has served directly 10,000 victims of domestic violence in the past year. And it's not just the partners that it impacts, it's also the children and other family members. You know, they say that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will be a victim of domestic violence at some point in their lifetime. So
that means we probably know somebody that's involved in that kind of a relationship. So if you're on the outside looking in, I mean, quite honestly, I don't want to offend anybody. I go, why? Why don't you see it? What, you're living with this person, you're being abused, why not get out of the situation? But it's not that easy, is it?
Right, and I think that is often the question that we hear, why don't people just leave? And it's important to understand that leaving is a process, not an event. It often takes a victim an average of 4 to 6 times before the leaving is actually permanent. That can be for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of barriers to getting out of these situations. It can be financially very difficult to support themselves on their own. They may have been isolated from any means of having employment or access to income. They may be very isolated from friends and family, so not feel that they can turn to family members for support. Family members may have been supported initially, but after that 2 or 3 times of going back, the family support might disappear. It can be, we have ideas about what we want our relationships to be and ideas about what marriage looks like, and also ideas about what type of family unit we want to provide for our children. And so sometimes, thinking about leaving a situation, it can be very difficult, particularly when we think about all of the challenges that they're going to face to try to achieve self-sustainability on the outside. And we also know that leaving is the most dangerous time. So they need to do it with a good plan because they're most likely to be killed when they try to leave.
Oh my goodness, and this is where InterAct comes in. In fact, our team had the opportunity to interview Jessica Smith, who is a victim of abuse, and why don't we just listen to Jessica and her story.
Great.
My name is Jessica Smith. 9 years ago, I was in a relationship with the father of our 2 kids. We were living in a big custom-built house in a nice, quiet neighborhood. From the outside looking in, people probably thought that I was living the ideal life. What they didn't know was what went on when our door was closed. They didn't know how he would sit at work and monitor our bank account to track where I was by what I spent. They didn't know how our 2 little boys would hide underneath their beds whenever their dad got angry and started yelling. They didn't know about the secrets and the hitting and the bruises and the fear. I knew that I needed to leave him. I could tell that things were getting progressively more dangerous. I started to put a plan together to make sure that when I left, I could go and I would never have to come back. I secured a daycare voucher for my kids for when I was at work. I was working part-time and I was looking for a full-time position. I found a full-time position at my job. And my first week of working full-time, I would get up every morning and get my kids ready for daycare. I would get them dressed and fed and in the car, and every morning he would offer to help with them. And I would say, no, 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 I love spending this extra time with them. That Friday morning, the same thing happened. I got up, got them dressed, and he offered to take them, and I declined. And he looked at me and he said, I know exactly what you're doing. You're trying to see if you can do this by yourself. And he was right. That's exactly what I was doing. The very next day, we got into an argument, and he held me down in our bed, and he strangled me until I lost consciousness. While I was unconscious, he continued to assault me. He broke 3 of my teeth, he broke my jaw, I needed 8 stitches in my chin and 10 in my tongue. And that night, standing in my driveway covered in my own blood, the police officer asked if I wanted to press charges, and I said yes, and with that simple word, I took away his freedom and I gave myself back mine. For me, being in an abusive relationship was like a tornado had touched down and just hovered over my life, and all I could do was just hang on and bear it in order to survive it. And when it was over, I was left to stand amongst the wreckage it had left behind. I had no idea where to start or where to begin to even put the pieces back together. And I had these 2 little boys looking at me, needing me to just keep pushing forward. For a long time, I pretended that I was fine when I absolutely was a complete disaster. And I was lying to my friends and my family, saying, I'm okay, I'm okay. And eventually I realized that I was not okay, and I really needed to do something to help myself move forward in healing. And that led me here to InterAct, where I came in and I met with a counselor. And it was the very first time that I felt like somebody understood what I had been through. And it was the first time that somebody was willing to let me be where I was and not push me to where they thought that I should be. And it was the first time that I felt like I was on the right path and that I was capable of traveling on it. There's not a doubt in my mind that coming here to InterAct helped to save my life. Today, I am married to an amazing man, and we just had a little girl in July, and my boys are doing amazingly well. They have been through the ringer with me, and somehow they have come out the other side of it, and they're surprisingly well-adjusted and just good, kind young men, and I couldn't be prouder of the people they're becoming. And I also have the privilege of volunteering here at InterAct and sharing my story, because I know that there are people who are still living inside that same tornado that I was once in, and it's my hope that by sharing, I can help to change that for someone.
All right, what an amazing story. Now, and that goes to your point, that when she chose to leave, really became the most dangerous time in that relationship.
Absolutely. We find that a woman is 75% more likely to be killed at the time of leaving than if she just stayed. And Jessica is certainly an example of when you exit a relationship like that, you need lots of support around you to help and rebuild your life during that time.
Amazing. Well, and when we come back, there's so much more to talk about. We'll talk about InterAct and how they rebuild people's lives, so stick around.